Greetings and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching Compliance Management within Exchange 2013. Regulatory compliance is very important in most, if not all, Exchange environments. Ensuring your organization is in sync with legal requirements with regard to things like e-discovery and other key aspects to compliance, this is a must for Exchange administrators. In this lesson, we will review all of the many features that Exchange 2013 has built in to help us meet regulatory compliance. Okay, so let's get started. We live in a world that's filled with new rules and regulations, and we can see that through some of these regulations that are listed here, like Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, the Patriot Act, and so forth. Every organization is different, and how one company might need to apply compliance rules with regard to retaining messages and e-discovery and so forth might be completely different from another. Consider the difference in business between a private investment banking organization like Goldman Sachs and a small mom-and-pop vacuum company business with, let's say, 30 employees. It's true both have legal requirements, but they need to each discover which rules and regulations apply in their case and then implement the technology to ensure that they're abiding by those rules. That's what regulatory compliance is all about. And although you might want to go toward third-party tools to assist with meeting legal requirements in your case, and that's fine, that actually makes sense in some cases, but it's good to note that Exchange 2013 actually has a lot to offer in terms of management features that are built right in. Let's take a look. We're going to move through these features quickly and then jump right over to our Exchange server to dive deeper into the use of them. So for starters, we have in-place e-discovery and hold. What this does is it allows us to search mailboxes throughout the organization. And so we can search for specific information, we can preview the search results, and then we can copy the results to a discovery mailbox. In addition, in-place hold forces a hold on data that's discovered during in-place e-discovery. Now, it's important to note that legal hold or litigation hold, it is still available with Exchange 2013, but it has been deprecated. In other words, it's a feature they don't really want you to use any longer going forward. It was introduced in Exchange 2010 in order to preserve data for e-discovery. And so we're actually going to demonstrate it a little bit later on because it is available. You're going to see it when you're working with Exchange and with mailboxes, and so it's good for you to know that it does exist and it can be used. The difference between legal hold or litigation hold and in-place hold is that in-place hold will provide a more granular hold capability. And so it's based on query parameters that we're going to demonstrate. You can provide a hold period. You can have the ability to place multiple holds, whereas legal hold, as you'll see when we demonstrate it later on when we go through the scenario, it allows you to place all items on hold indefinitely or until you remove the hold. So it's good, but it lacks the flexibility and the granular control that we now have with the in-place hold that you get through the in-place e-discovery and hold features. Next up is auditing. Auditing keeps an audit log of all actions taken on all mailboxes. So this can be very important in terms of knowing whether or not an individual actually sent the email that perhaps they're saying, I didn't send that email, or it may have come from my account, but it wasn't me that sent it. It might have been someone who I have delegated permissions to use my mailbox or to send mail as if it's from my mailbox. And so auditing is done based on access by owners, delegates, and even administrators. You can also run various reports that relate not only to mailboxes, but to other aspects within Exchange. For example, various role groups, which we discussed in a previous lesson, and how permissions have been set up, and when permission changes have been made, or persons have been given a greater level of permission. For example, if you've given someone the ability to be part of e-discovery through the discovery management role, that would actually be logged, and you can actually see a log from the auditing features. And we will take a look at that in a moment as well. Next up, we have transport rules. These allow you to create conditions, actions, and exceptions over mail that's flowing through your organization. And so with transport rules, we have the ability to make sure, let's say an individual in one part of the company cannot email individuals in another part of the company that might cause a problem when it comes to legal ramifications over Chinese wall policies, or more clearly over situations where there might be insider trading. And so they may be able to meet outside the organization, go for drinks and share information, but you can prove within your exchange organization that there were rules in place that prevented persons from one side from emailing persons in the other, if that's something that you have to have in place. So that's one way of utilizing transport rules. Another way is to be concerned about whether or not emails that go outside your company are sending sensitive data, perhaps data that should not go outside, or perhaps you simply want a copy of emails that are being sent, especially if they relate to things that are of a legal nature. And so you may want to have emails that are specifically tagged to go in a certain direction. You can also use transport rules for something as simple as adding a disclaimer for legal purposes to the bottom of all emails that leave your organization, while at the same time not putting that same disclaimer on emails that are sent back and forth between persons within the organization. So transport rules can be very helpful with compliance, but another new feature of Exchange 2013 is data loss prevention, DLP. This is a form of transport rule that prevents users or alerts users, depending on how you set this up, from sending sensitive information like credit card numbers. So that's just one form of information. It could also be social security numbers or a host of other types of sensitive data that you don't want to have leave your organization. Now, DLP rules are based on regulatory standards. So we're going to see when we set these up that there are standards that you can choose from. You don't have to guess at what types of standards you might want to implement. You can choose from a list of templates that are already there. However, transport rules and data loss prevention is the type of topic that requires a little bit more time. So in another lesson, we're going to dive deeper on the use of transport rules and data loss prevention. Messaging Records Management, MRM, is another important feature when it comes to compliance. This revolves around email lifecycle policies. So essentially, your end users have inboxes that are filled with data, and you need to mitigate some of that in terms of knowing which data to archive, knowing which data to delete, and helping them along when it comes to being able to either have automatic procedures in place, policies in place that can help them to cull their mailbox, or help them to tag those messages on their own when it comes to personal retention policies. So all of this works around retention policies that are used to classify messages. And it's important to note that retention policies are also great when it comes to working with those and archive mailboxes, because you have the ability to make sure that even though you're removing data from the person's inbox and moving those emails out of their daily working inbox, the fact is you can make sure there's a copy of that data so that you are completely within compliance, and you can have it archived so that it can be accessed later on. And you can make sure that it's discoverable, because now that it's part of the archive, it can be searched for with an e-discovery search. Next up, we have journaling. Journaling provides the ability to retain copies of all incoming and outgoing mail through standard journaling. So with standard journaling, you're pretty much saying, hey, all email coming in and going out, we want to make sure we have a copy of it sent to this journal mailbox. So you set up a mailbox, and then you point all that mail off to that mailbox. Now, does that provide for full compliance with regard to all data being retained for any period of time? Well, it depends on your situation and whether or not that's considered acceptable. In many cases, that's not acceptable. It's just another method to provide for greater compliance. But you would still need some kind of archiving feature in order to make sure that, based upon individual mailboxes, all email is archived for however many years necessary in order to meet compliance for your organization. Now, there is a more granular level of journaling that can be provided through premium journaling, and so this is set up on the Exchange server the same as you would set up standard journaling. However, with the journal rules that you create, you need to make sure that whatever mailboxes are being journaled specifically, as opposed to just all email going in and out of your organization, if you're looking at specific mailboxes to journal, then in those cases you need to make sure that you have the enterprise client access license for those mailboxes. Next up is information rights management. This works in harmony with Active Directory rights management services to protect messages and attachments. And so you can do a lot of fun things with information rights management. You can say that you don't want an email that you've sent to a person to be forwarded to someone else. You can say that you don't want the attachment to be forwarded. You can prevent messages from being printed or attachments from being printed. So you can establish quite a bit within the settings. However, the arm of control with information rights management is not all extending. In other words, there are ways around the various settings that you provide. You can find ways to copy messages and print them and so forth. So it's more of a deterrent than a full-fledged protection element. It will deter individuals from doing the things that you don't want them to do. But people are creative. They find ways around the rules when they want to. And last but not least, we have in-place archiving, which we talked about a moment ago when it comes to retention policies. But by having archiving and an archive mailbox, this eliminates the proliferation of PST files. And why is that important with regard to compliance? Well, PST files, they can be searched, but they make it much more difficult in terms of searching for data for e-discovery. And so when there is a lawsuit of sorts and you have to now go out there and find emails, you have to go searching through PST files, you have to go searching all over the organization to ensure that you're providing to the judicial representatives all of the data that you have at your disposal. So PST files makes that much more difficult, if not impossible. However, for many years, users would use PST files because their quotas were too small. And so they would remove data from their inbox because they had no room. Or they would just delete. That's what they do. They just delete it. But some of that data might be necessary. So the good news is disk is cheap. You can make sure you have either plenty of space for your mailboxes, or you can make sure that they have an archive mailbox, and then either through their own efforts or through retention policies, you can make sure that all of the data that is necessary to be retained is retained and is searchable through e-discovery search. So this is all part of making sure your organization is in compliance. Okay, we've taken a long time actually to define each of these different features. Let's jump over to the Exchange server at this point, and let's take a look at how we would implement some of these features through the Exchange Admin Center. Alright, so here we are on our Windows Server 2012. We're already logged into the Exchange Admin Center, and we need to go to the Compliance Management feature, and from there you can see most of the features we were just talking about. Here you can see in-place e-discovery and hold, auditing, data loss prevention, retention policies, retention tags, and journal rules. And then if we wanted to look at transport rules, we would go to mail flow, and here we have rules. We'll talk about this in a future lesson. When it comes to archive mailboxes, or when it comes to putting a mailbox on legal hold, we can see from recipients that we have the in-place archive feature, the in-place hold. So some of these features, when it comes to compliance, are distributed throughout the features listing here on the left, but for the most part, they're all found within compliance management. So let's take a look at each one of these. For starters, we have in-place e-discovery and hold. And you can see that there's no items to show in this view. Basically, this allows us to search the mailboxes in our organization for email and other message types that contain specific keywords. You can create a new search or edit and restart an existing one. So here, if we click the plus sign, we have to provide a name for the search. We can provide a description that we can use later on to follow up and see what this search was all about. We click Next. Now, at this point, we can determine if we want to search all mailboxes or specify mailboxes to search. So let's say we know exactly who we're looking to search. Let's say it's Donna O'Grady. We click OK. As opposed to searching all mailboxes within the organization. If we know that perhaps we're looking for some information with regard to Donna, whether it's connected to a sexual harassment case or perhaps insider trading, really whatever is motivating the mailbox search, in that case we can specify a single mailbox, we can specify multiple mailboxes, or we can search all mailboxes. So a very easy to use tool to perform this e-discovery. We click Next. And then here we can include all user mailbox content, or we can filter it based on criteria. So in that case, we might have keywords that we're looking for. We might have a specific start date and end date that we're looking for. We might have a from or to that we're looking for. So it really depends on perhaps accusations that have been made, perhaps specific claims that have been made with regard to conversations that may be alleged to have taken place between Donna and other individuals in the company or outside the company. So depending on what you're looking for, you can actually use any of this to narrow down your search, or you can say I'm going to include all user mailbox content. In this case, we don't have a real case in front of us, so we're going to use all mailbox content and just see what returns back our way. We click Next. Now notice this, we can place the content matching the search query in the selected mailboxes on hold. So once we find this content, we can say this content is on hold, it cannot be deleted. And so that could be helpful. We can say hold indefinitely or specify number of days to hold items relative to their received date. So at this time, we're not going to hold any of the data that we find. We're just looking to demonstrate the tool itself. So we'll click Finish. It's completed. We click Close. And we can see the name of the search, that the hold status is no, when it was modified, created by, and we can edit this as well. We can hit the little pencil and make an edit to this in terms of narrowing it down perhaps a little bit more. We can see the status is estimate succeeded. And if we want a preview of what comes back here, we can click the little down arrow next to the magnifying glass, estimate search results, which has already been done, preview search results, or copy search results. So in this case, let's preview the search results. Okay, so here we see the results of our search. Not much to show here. Donna's not a real person. This is a fictitious account. So we look here and we see an item count of 24. And we can scroll down and see that there were some tests made by Donna. And we can click to any one of these and we can see the messages that were sent. So you can see how a search of this sort, it's really not that difficult in order to set it up through the in-place eDiscovery and hold feature here. And this is how we would pretty much use it to perform mailbox searches. And then from this point, we can save the search, use it again later on. We don't have to delete it out of here, or we can delete it if we feel like we're not going to use it again. And we can run it again. We can place items on legal hold if we feel it's necessary. And so that's pretty much this feature, the eDiscovery and hold feature for compliance management. Then we have auditing. And you can see here that auditing is really a grouping of reports that can help when it comes to various changes that are made to mailboxes and configuration settings. And so you can run a non-owner mailbox access report, run an administrator role group report, run an in-place discovery and hold report, run a per mailbox litigation hold report, export mailbox audit logs, and export the administrator audit log. So this is interesting that you can run reports based upon administration, because then it proves whether or not an administrator did what he or she said they were going to do, or more specifically when certain things were done. So here, run an administrator role group report. We can see here that a new role group was created, and we can see what roles were added to that role group, who did the creation, in this case the administrator, when it was done. And so this was something that we did in a previous lesson when we were discussing permissions, but it was added to the audit log. And so we appreciate that. In addition, we see discovery management. We can see that Joel Agrawal was added to the discovery management role group. That has been stamped into the audit log. So it's nice that we have this ability to audit these various features. We can specify a date range or select the role groups to search for. So there's quite a bit of flexibility here in terms of the various audit logs that we have. And you can see that this could be very helpful when it comes to compliance and being able to prove when administrators did certain things, when individuals who are not the owner of mailboxes access those mailboxes and so forth. So all of this can be very helpful. The next one is data loss prevention. We know that we're going to talk about this in a future lesson when we talk about transport rules under Mailflow. So we'll save this for that future lesson. Then we have retention policies, and that connects to retention tags. So a policy, this is the default MRM policy, and it provides the ability for end users to place different tags on their email. So in this case, 1 month delete, 1 week delete, 1 year delete. This is really a great feature for allowing end users to manage their own content a little better. Now, this could be the type of policy that allows for personal choices in terms of being able to delete or move items from your inbox to other locations, or it could be the kind of thing where it's something that happens automatically. It really depends on the retention tags that are applied in the policy. Now, an end user can only have one policy applied to them at a time. So if we look at recipients and we just look at one of these end users and we go to mailbox features, here you can see no retention policy has been applied, but if we select the down arrow, we can provide that default MRM policy to this end user. Well, what's that going to do for them? Well, if we look back at the policy itself, it gives them all of these different options within these tags, and we can edit the policy by clicking the little pencil, and you can see most of these are personal policy types, so that it's really up to the end user if they want to apply the policy tag or not. So you say, okay, great, where do these tags come from? Well, they're actually under retention tags, and you can see these are the retention tags that are applied with that policy. Now, we can create additional ones. You hit the little plus sign, and you can make it where it's applied automatically, applied to a specific folder, applied by users to items and folders. So you can create different types of retention tags, default ones, specific folder ones, and then personal ones. And so depending on what you decide, in this case we chose personal, then you can make the retention tag be something along the lines of delete and allow recovery, permanently delete, or move to archive. So it's really meant to help mitigate expanding mailboxes that perhaps don't need to be expanding. Let's say you have unified messaging and you have voicemails coming into an individual's mailbox. Well, you may not want to retain those forever. So you can move them to archive, you can just delete them. There's a lot that you can do based upon the file type and based upon the different tags that you set. And last but not least, we have journal rules. And here we can click the little plus sign to create a journal rule, and we can say if the message is sent to or received from a specific user or group, or we can apply it to all messages. We can journal all messages, internal messages only, external messages only, and here's where we supply the name of the mailbox that we're going to send journal reports to. So remember, there's standard and there's premium journaling, although we don't actually have an option in terms of clicking a checkbox for standard or premium. It doesn't work like that. It really is based upon how we apply the journal rule. If the journal rule is applied very broadly to all messages, incoming and outgoing, then in that case we're looking at a standard journal rule. If we're setting up premium journaling, then we need to make sure that we have an enterprise client access license, and in that case then we also would configure specific users or groups, we would configure incoming or outgoing and so forth. So the choice between standard and premium is more along the lines of how you use it, not necessarily that you get a checkbox to choose one or the other. Alright, so we looked through the main compliance management features that we discussed. It's true, there are a few additional ones like information rights management and so forth. We're not going to dive deep into every single feature for compliance management at this time. What we wanted to do was discuss compliance management as a whole and present the various features that Exchange provides to assist Exchange administrators when it comes to handling legal compliance. This is a good starting point to help point you in the right direction so that you can study up more on this subject and master the various tools that are provided, as well as look at third-party tools and see when those tools might be more beneficial for an organization than the built-in tools within Exchange. Let's jump back over to our slides and let's take a look at our scenario again and look at the tasks that have been assigned with regard to compliance management for the Spytech Prime organization. Returning to our scenario, we have the following tasks that have been assigned to us with regard to our Spytech Prime organization. So for starters, we're going to enable the default retention policy and an in-place archive over Tim Berry. And then we're going to establish a standard journaling rule for all email going in and out of the organization. And we're going to have mail sent to the journal@spytechprime.com mailbox. So we'll have to create that mailbox and then send all mail to it. And then we'll place Wendy Lindsay's mailbox on litigation hold, also known as legal hold. All right, so let's get to work. All right, so for starters, we're going to enable the default retention policy, the one that we already have created here under retention policies. We're going to enable this for Tim Berry. And we're also going to establish an in-place archive over Tim Berry. So in order to do this, we actually don't do it through the compliance management feature at all. We go to recipients, and here we're going to scroll down and find Tim's account. There he is. We go to mailbox features, and from here we're going to choose the retention policy, the default MRM policy. We're also going to scroll down and notice under archiving that's been disabled for him. We're going to click enable. It asks us where we want to archive the old email, and so at this point, if you have a separate database that's set up in this case, then you can choose that. We're going to choose the same database just for the sake of ease of use here. We click OK. And now Tim Berry has not only an MRM default retention policy applied, but he also has in-place archive for his mailbox. We click Save. Now, one thing that should be mentioned is that behind the scenes, there's a managed folder assistant. And what this does is it runs on the mailbox servers to process mailbox that have a retention policy applied. So the way this works, they're always running. They don't need to be scheduled. So they process mailboxes based upon a work cycle. And at times they reach a specified interval known as the work cycle checkpoint. And so what it does is it refreshes the list of mailboxes that it has to process, and it goes forward and it processes the mailboxes that have retention policies applied. Well, being that we just applied this retention policy to Tim Berry, if he were to log into his account right now at this very moment, he might not see the changes made. He might not be able to apply policies to his emails. So in order to speed things up, we're actually going to manually trigger the assistant to process a specified mailbox, in this case Tim Berry's mailbox. And so we're going to use the start-managed folder assistant commandlet in order to push this forward, just to demonstrate the fact that this works, and Tim Berry now has not only an archive mailbox, but also the ability to apply those retention policy tags. So to do that, let's open up the Exchange Management shell. All right, and so all we're going to do is type in start managed folder assistant and provide an identity, Tim Berry. And it's always good when we don't get an error message back our way. That typically means that everything went well. So let's jump over to a Windows 8 system logged in with Tim Berry, and let's take a look at the changes that have been made now to his Outlook experience as a result of having this in-place archive, as well as having these retention policy tags that now he can apply to various emails that come his way. Alright, so here we are logged in as Tim Berry on a Windows 8 system. If we go over to his desktop, we see we have Outlook 2013 already opened, and you can see he has two emails from the administrator. One is important, and it says please save. The other is fun email, please delete in a week or so. So this just provides the opportunity to demonstrate the retention tags. So if we look here, we don't see anything else that's different, but if we click all folders, you can see that in addition to the folders that Tim typically has with an inbox, now Tim has an online archive. There's nothing in it at this point, but this is that in-place archive that we've provided for Tim's mailbox. And so we can move items over to this manually, or we can use our retention policies to do that as well. So if we look here, this is the fun email. It says please delete in a week. If we right-click the email itself, this is a new setting that other individuals in the organization do not have, the assign policy setting. And that's because they don't have those policies applied to them. Now you can go through and assign the default policy, or you can create additional policies that have the retention tags that you need. This is using the default policy and the default tags. So if we look at this, we recall that this said please delete in a week or so. So we can choose 1 week delete to apply to this email. This item will expire in 6 days. So we can apply a different policy there, or we can keep it for a week and then it will automatically cull itself from our inbox. Now that's different from the important email where it says please save. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to assign it to an archive so that we can save it for as long as we'd like. Keeping in mind that these are all deletion policies, so we wouldn't be saving this, we can say let's archive this for 5 years. So at this point we can say we've completed this task. Tim Berry has an archive for his mailbox, and retention policies have been applied through the default MRM policy. Let's jump back over to our Exchange server and let's complete the second task, which is establishing a standard journaling rule for all email going in and out of the organization. Alright, so for starters, we have created the journal mailbox already. We're going to use this mailbox with the standard journal rule that we're going to create, and so all email will go to this standard journal mailbox. And so all incoming and outgoing email will be retained in this journal mailbox as well. The copy of it will be sent to this journal mailbox. Now, this does not necessarily provide all of the features necessary to be in compliance with retaining email that goes in and out of your organization. It's one tool and it's one option, but it's one that you need to consider, because what this means is that every email that gets sent and every email that's received is going to be retained in this mailbox. So you may want to put it on its own database, on its own set of disks, so that it does not conflict with the storage that you have for the rest of your organization. Just something to think about there. Now if we go over to Compliance Management, to Journal Rules, we'll click the plus sign and we'll give it a name. We're going to say apply to all messages, and we're going to select all messages to be journaled. We're going to send it to journal@spytechprime.com and click Save. It says, do you want this rule to apply to all future messages? Yes. Okay, and so that's pretty much it. We now have a journal rule for our organization that says all emails going in and out of the organization will be retained in the journal mailbox. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to place a user's mailbox on legal hold. If we go over to recipients, we're looking for Wendy Lindsay's mailbox. We scroll down. There's Wendy. And we see the user is not under hold currently, and we cannot do that through the links here on the right. With other things we have action links, but not in this case. So we have to literally look into the properties of Wendy's account, go to Mailbox Features, scroll down, and here, Litigation Hold, we click Enable. And note, it says when a user's mailbox is put on litigation hold, the user can delete items from their mailbox, but the items are retained by Microsoft Exchange. So a person may think, I'm going to clear this up, I'm going to delete emails that may incriminate me or may put me in a bad light in this situation, and so I'm just going to get rid of them. Well, once that mailbox is on legal hold, those emails are not going anywhere. They may think that they've deleted them, but they're still there and they're still discoverable. So you can actually put a note in here as well for Outlook 2010 users or later that will let them know that their mailbox is on legal hold. And you can provide a URL as well. This can direct the user to a website for more information about litigation hold. This way they can get more information about why their mailbox is on legal hold and what this means in their case So here's an example. You'd have to create the website and then provide it here as a URL. This is really a kindness for your end users so that they're not confused as to what's happening. So in this case, we're not going to provide a note or a URL. We'll just click Save and then Save. And here we see that warning message that it is a deprecated feature, and although your litigation hold settings will continue to work as before, we recommend that you use in-place hold to place mailboxes on hold. We click OK, and then OK. So it may take a little time for that hold to take effect. So this is the deprecated feature. We recall that we have the compliance management in-place eDiscovery and hold. And so we can actually place a mailbox setting on hold through here. In this case, we're looking at Donna's account because we recall the search query. The mailbox is for her account. Here's the search query. And if we want, we can place content matching the query on hold. So it's quite a bit to take in all at once, the various compliance management features. This is really a field in and of itself, and you can spend quite a bit more time looking into the various rules and regulations and ways that you can utilize the built-in tools, as well as look at third-party tools to assist you in ensuring compliance management for your existing organization, or if you're a consultant, for a variety of different organizations that you might be working with to provide compliance management in each circumstance. Remember, every organization is different, and the rules that apply to those organizations are different as well. So for some, this is what they specialize in, providing compliance management using either the built-in tools when appropriate or a third-party tool. So we hope you found this informative. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next lesson.